Most people assume wealth announces itself: a nicer car, a bigger house, some visible signal that money has arrived. But that assumption breaks down in ordinary places. Sit inside a Starbucks on a weekday morning, and the person next to you, plain clothes, old laptop, no urgency, might be far wealthier than anyone driving past outside. What's interesting is that this isn't random. There are repeatable habits behind that invisibility, and I honestly believe that learning to adopt some of them can quietly change the direction of your own financial life. I'm Alex. Today we'll look at a set of observable signals that tend to appear long before wealth becomes visible patterns that most people overlook, even when they're already living them. It starts with the conversations quietly wealthy people refuse to have. Avoiding the threes earn expensive access. People who are quietly wealthy are unusually careful about what they talk about, not because they're secretive, but because they don't need reinforcement. They rarely discuss how much they earn. In everyday conversations, income stays vague. Phrases like, "I do fine," or "I get by" replace numbers. When someone constantly mentions salary or bonuses, it usually signals comparison pressure, not confidence. They also stay silent about expensive purchases. While others post new cars, watches, or vacations, quietly wealthy people let those moments pass without announcement. Not because they don't buy nice things, but because they understand that talking about price often means justifying the expense, sometimes even to themselves. And they avoid visible excess, not living poorly, just not living loudly. No stacked luxury signals, no effort to look impressive. Their focus stays on flexibility, having options, time, and margin, rather than broadcasting success. Here's the contrast most people miss. Talking about money purchases or lifestyle takes energy. It creates expectations. It invites comparison. Quietly wealthy people redirect that energy elsewhere, toward building net worth, reducing risk, and staying unpressured. When someone doesn't explain their income, doesn't advertise spending, and doesn't perform success, it often isn't because they lack wealth. It's because they've moved past needing to prove it. Careful image management. Quietly wealthy people pay close attention to how much of themselves they reveal, not to manipulate others, but to avoid unnecessary friction. They understand something most people learn too late. Money changes dynamics. Even with close friends, success introduces comparison, not always openly. Sometimes it's subtle, a shift in tone, a different expectation, a quiet recalibration of how people see you. So they manage their image carefully. If asked about net worth, the answer stays imprecise. "I've done okay. I'm comfortable. I'm not the richest person I know." These aren't evasions, they're filters. Here's a real pattern. The more successful someone becomes, the more likely they are to downplay it, especially around people who aren't in the same position. Not out of guilt, out of awareness. There's also a practical side. Visibility attracts attention. Attention invites questions. Questions invite assumptions. And assumptions can turn into resentment, pressure, or even risk. Quiet wealth minimizes all of that. One high net worth individual once described himself as poor compared to his friends, even though he was worth well into 9 figures. That wasn't false modesty. It was relative framing. Careful image management isn't about hiding. It's about control, about choosing when success is relevant and when it's simply none of anyone else's business. The quieter the signal, the fewer problems it creates. Driving an older, paid-off, reliable car. Quietly wealthy people tend to drive cars that barely register, 5, 7, sometimes 10 years old, fully paid off, nothing that asks to be noticed. That's not an accident, it's arithmetic. New cars lose value fast. In the first 5 years, most vehicles shed the majority of their price through depreciation alone. After that point, the curve flattens. The damage is already done. So instead of a $700 monthly payment on something shrinking every day, they keep the cash. $6,000 to $9,000 a year redirected into investments compounds quietly. Over a decade, that gap can cross 6 figures without any increase in income. Here's the contrast. A flashy car feels like progress. A paid-off car creates margin. One looks successful. The other actually is. To them, a car is transportation. Point A to point B. Reliability matters more than image. Predictable maintenance beats unpredictable payments. You'll often hear this phrased simply, "I'd rather be wealthy than look wealthy." Because debt attached to appearance is still pressure, and pressure limits options. The irony is that many people with the highest incomes feel trapped by their vehicles. Meanwhile, the person driving an unremarkable sedan with no payment has flexibility most people underestimate. The car doesn't signal wealth, the absence of obligation does. Extreme selectivity on small purchases, decisiveness on big ones. Quietly wealthy people often behave in ways that look inconsistent at first. They'll spend 20 minutes comparing a $20 item, then approve a $15,000 expense without hesitation. That contrast isn't about being cheap, it's about classification. Small purchases are usually wants. There are dozens of nearly identical options, all promising the same outcome. So they slow down. They read reviews. They wait. Not to save a dollar, but to avoid repeating small leaks hundreds of times a year. Large purchases that are necessary are treated differently. A roof fails, a medical bill appears, a critical repair can't wait. In those moments, they act fast. No drama, no delay. The cost is accepted because the alternative is risk or disruption. This pattern usually shows up in people who built wealth themselves. They learned early that small decisions compound quietly, while big problems get more expensive when ignored. Here's the part most people miss. Spending carefully on small things preserves mental clarity. Spending decisively on necessary big things preserves stability. One habit protects cash flow, the other protects time. Together, they prevent the constant friction that keeps most people financially reactive. Mastery of waiting and delayed gratification. Quietly wealthy people are unusually comfortable waiting, not because they lack desire, but because they don't confuse urgency with importance. When they want something, they pause. Days, weeks, sometimes months. The impulse fades or the decision becomes clearer. Often the purchase never happens at all. They also understand how sales actually work. Most discounts are anchored to made-up prices. The deal exists because someone else decided when urgency should be created. Waiting removes that leverage. Here's a common pattern. A person sees an item on sale and feels relief for acting fast. A quietly wealthy person feels relief for not acting at all. This shows up everywhere. Electronics, furniture, travel, even lifestyle upgrades. If it's truly valuable, it will still be valuable later. If it disappears, it probably wasn't essential. Delayed gratification isn't framed as discipline. It's framed as optionality. Waiting keeps choices open. Acting too fast closes them. Most people struggle to delay anything for more than a day. Quietly wealthy people delay for years. When it makes sense, investments, lifestyle changes, even recognition. They trade speed for control. And over time, that patience compounds into something most people never experience: financial decisions made without pressure. Waiting isn't passive, it's protective. How you handle sudden advantage. Let's pause for a moment before moving forward. Everything so far has pointed to restraint, patience, and quiet control. This is where those ideas become personal. Imagine this. You receive an unexpected $25,000. No debt attached, no deadline. No one else knows. Nothing in your life breaks if you leave it untouched. Now pay attention to your first instinct. One option is to upgrade something visible: a better car, a trip, a lifestyle improvement that finally feels justified. The money becomes proof. Another option is to move fast. Invest immediately. Optimize returns. Put the money to work so it doesn't feel wasted sitting still. The last option is to do almost nothing. Park it. Increase margin. Let time create more choices. Here's the question. Which option did you lean toward first? There's no right answer, but the direction matters. Turning it into lifestyle increases exposure. Rushing to deploy it increases speed and fragility. Letting it sit increases capacity. Quiet wealth tends to favor capacity before action. Not because it lacks ambition, but because it understands that flexibility creates leverage. What matters isn't the money. It's how comfortable you are doing nothing when nothing is required. That comfort quietly predicts what happens next. Spending on uncommon things. Quietly wealthy people don't spend less. They spend differently, and often in ways you never see. A large portion of their money goes toward buying back time. Not luxury for show, but services that remove friction. Someone else handles groceries. Meals are prepared in advance. Travel is optimized to avoid waiting lines and wasted hours. From the outside, nothing looks expensive, but days move faster. This spending is almost invisible unless you follow their routine closely. No social posts. No receipts shared. Just fewer interruptions and more control over their schedule. They also spend on things most people overlook: rare collectibles, niche art, vintage items, objects valued for scarcity, not popularity. While mass luxury loses appeal quickly, Uncommon items retain meaning and sometimes value because they aren't everywhere. Here's the contrast. Most people spend to signal success. Quietly wealthy people spend to remove constraints. Once basic needs are covered, status stops being the goal. Differentiation replaces it. Not louder, just more specific. Time privacy and uniqueness become the real luxuries. And because those don't advertise themselves, the spending goes unnoticed. That's the point. Living in a modest home below means quietly wealthy people often live in homes that feel smaller than expected. Not temporary, not accidental, chosen. While others stretch to the maximum a bank will approve, they stay well below it. The house fits their life, not their income. That decision quietly removes pressure. Lower mortgage or none at all. Fewer rooms to furnish. Less maintenance. Fewer ongoing costs that quietly multiply cleaning, landscaping, repairs, upgrades. Here's what most people underestimate: housing locks and lifestyle expectations. Once square footage expands, downsizing feels like failure. The cost isn't just money, it's flexibility. A modest home keeps options open. Career changes don't feel risky. Market downturns don't force panic. Cash flow stays predictable. Many quietly wealthy homeowners never advertise that they own outright. No announcement, no payoff post, just fewer monthly obligations and more room to maneuver. From the outside, it can look conservative. From the inside, it feels light. Big houses impress visitors. Small, manageable homes protect freedom. And over decades, that single choice often does more to preserve wealth than almost any investment strategy. Extreme respect for simplicity and maintenance. Japanese wealth signal. Quietly wealthy people often keep things far longer than expected. Not because they can't upgrade, but because they don't need to. You'll see a 10-year-old car in perfect condition. A watch worn daily for decades. Furniture that's been repaired, not replaced. Everything works. Nothing feels rushed. This mindset shows up clearly in Japanese wealth culture. Value isn't created by newness. It's created by care. Maintenance is treated as a skill, not a chore. Repair comes before replacement. Cleaning before upgrading. Preservation before expansion. Over time, this reduces waste, lowers costs, and removes constant decision pressure. Here's the contrast most people miss. Constant upgrading signals instability. Constant maintenance signals control. People chasing novelty stay busy. People protecting what they own stay calm. There's also a psychological shift. When possessions last, urgency disappears. When urgency disappears, spending slows naturally without rules or budgets. Wealth in this frame isn't loud. It's orderly, predictable, quietly durable. Simplicity isn't minimalism. It's confidence that what you already have is enough and worth taking care of. That calm carries into every financial decision that follows. Key takeaways. Quiet wealth isn't defined by what shows up on the surface. It reveals itself through restraint, patience, and a preference for control over recognition. Across these signs, the same pattern keeps appearing. Less urgency, fewer explanations. Decisions made to reduce pressure rather than increase status. Income is downplayed. Spending is selective. Waiting is comfortable. Big obligations are avoided. Time and flexibility are treated as assets, not luxuries. Even possessions are kept longer, not out of frugality, but out of confidence. What separates quietly wealthy behavior from visible success isn't intelligence or effort. It's how much noise someone needs around their decisions. The fewer signals required, the more stable the structure underneath usually is. This way of operating doesn't feel exciting in the moment, but over long periods it compounds into something rare: financial choices made calmly, without urgency, and without needing approval. That calm is often the earliest sign that wealth is already forming.